I'm doing Zelda year. So 2021 is the 35th anniversary of the Zelda series. So currently, I have about 11 video ideas that span the entire Zelda series from first to most recent.
Psst. Hey, Justin. We're halfway through January, and the only thing you've put out so far is a Persona video.
You're absolutely right. But, in my defense, disembodied voice that sounds weirdly like me but pitch shifted, for one, I'm very proud of that Persona video and wanted to give it some time to hopefully get picked up by YouTube's stupid algorithms. And two, we're still getting Mario announcements, so I hadn't really thought about Zelda yet. But yeah, I should probably do something about that. I'll admit, with Nintendo being weirdly silent so far about anything to do with their 2021 plans, I haven't really been inspired to do any of my planned Zelda videos for this year. But I said I'd try to do a video a month, so I thought of a different idea. How about I share my predictions for what the Big N might do this year to celebrate the Big Z? That's Nintendo and Zelda, respectively, for those not privy to the lingo. But yeah, the last time I tried to predict what I'd like to see, it went so well. Actually, I say that sarcastically, but I was about half right, so it wasn't too bad. So I figured I'll put my mouth where Nintendo's money is and see how close I get. And then at the end of the year, we can all look back and laugh at how optimistic I was, considering how utterly they botched the Big M's 35th. And again, that's Mario. Keep up! Alright, I'm separating my predictions out into 4 different categories, and this first one's a pretty obvious one. We will definitely get a slew of remasters and re-releases. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we got kind of a 3D All-Stars collection that probably includes the HD remasters of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess from the Wii U, and also throws in a remaster of Skyward Sword to incentivize Wii U owners to buy it again. They already kind of did this once back on the GameCube with Ocarina of Time bundled with Master Quest and, I think, Majora's Mask? I could double check that fact, but I already wrote it and I'm too lazy to tab over to a browser, so instead I'll just leave this stupidly meta sentence in the script and let the comments rip me apart for it. Makes sense. Anyway, I'm sure we'll also get some digital releases, like maybe they'll use the Nintendo Online service to introduce N64 games with Ocarina of Time as the first inclusion, or just ports of the 3DS versions of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on the eShop, with barely modified improvements and changes to work on Switch, because it's modern-day Nintendo we're talking about. For me personally, though, the hypest announcement in this category would be remakes of the Oracle games using the Link's Awakening HD engine. I think they'd change the art style a bit, maybe more watercolor than porcelain doll, but I'd be cool with whatever. I just love those games even more than Link's Awakening, and I think they deserve a larger audience. So gimme. I know that seemed like a lot of predictions thrown together, but it's a broad category. Let's move on to the next prediction, though. I think this one's probably pretty obvious too, honestly. Breath of the Wild 2. Or whatever it ends up being called. It's really weird that we haven't heard anything about it since the announcement trailer, and while I'd imagine the global pandemic hasn't been terribly kind to any of Nintendo's game plans for the past year, that still seems like one we should have at least gotten a follow-up hype trailer for. Or at least a proper name. But I still believe they've put it off to be their big Zelda game for the 35th anniversary. Which admittedly is still better than Mario got, since his anniversary will be ending soon with nothing more than a lot of brand deals, a few gimmicky spin-off titles, and a couple moderately enhanced ports. Unless you want to call Bowser's Fury a new Mario game. So who knows, maybe a totally new Zelda game is wishful thinking. But considering we already know it's coming eventually, I don't think it's unrealistic. I guess it's a ways off still, probably holiday 2021, so they have time this spring to reintroduce it with more details and properly promote for that coveted Black Friday shopping window. But I'd be baffled if they don't push for it to be out this year. Especially when it seems to be using the same map as Breath of the Wild, and it's been 4 years since that last game. It better be a pretty drastic departure at this point. Spider-Man Miles Morales didn't take that long to produce, and I feel like this was supposed to be a similar idea of reusing the same map with some updated areas and a new story and stuff. And while it's not the most accurate comparison, because obviously game development time has exploded recently, but look at Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. There was like less than a year between those games, because they reused a lot of the same assets and stuff, so I don't see how it's taken 4 years for this game. Anyway, I'm just kind of vamping at this point, because we know, like, nothing about this new game, but I really want it to come this year. I just want more Zelda in general. It's been too long. Not as long as Metroid or anything, but... let's move on before I make myself sad. The next prediction is also kind of broad and vague, but it also didn't seem worth splitting up into multiple topics. It's basically all the obligatory side stuff that's bound to come out. Brand deals with various clothing companies, toy manufacturers, etc. Still very exciting, especially if we get, like, Zelda Lego sets and stuff. Because my brother and I used to make our own Zelda dungeons out of regular Legos when we were kids, so I'd buy the crap out of an official set. I'm not sure we'd get any kind of Zelda 35 game, like with the Mario Battle Royale thing from last year. Not even sure how that would work logistically, unless it was like a Zelda 1 dungeon rush or something, but I could definitely see some in-game events, such as a downloadable course world for Mario Maker, full of Zelda-themed levels using the Link power-up in that game. Ooh, another Zelda rep in Smash Bros. As part of DLC Pack 2 would be pretty dope too, but the most obvious contender would be one of the champions from Breath of the Wild, and picking only one would leave some group of people upset. Hopefully the fish lovers. Y'all are sick and should be ashamed of yourselves. Anyway, like I said, this is a pretty vague category, so it's kinda hard to get too deep into specifics. And you might say it's kind of cheating, because so many things could fit here that I can't possibly be wrong. And to that I'd say, you're right. Moving on. Finally, my hypest prediction on this list, which means it's also the most likely to be wrong, is a full-blown Zelda Maker game. Let me start off by saying this would almost certainly be more of a Zelda Dungeon Maker, more akin to the Dungeon Maker in Link's Awakening HD, but with more customization rather than just picking between rooms from previous dungeons. They could maybe implement a basic overworld map structure, similar to the World Maker element introduced late into Mario Maker 2's life, but it'd probably be more like the adventure maps in the first Hyrule Warriors game, where you just lay your dungeons out on a grid, with maybe a few customizable screens to drop in between each dungeon. Think of like the way the overworld is laid out in squares in Zelda 1, or the random event screens you occasionally enter in Zelda 2. Anyway, I'd like to see the actual Maker element of this game utilizing various top-down Zelda graphic styles, namely Zelda 1, Link to the Past, Link Between Worlds, maybe Minish Cap, and probably Link's Awakening HD, with possibly a graphics toggle on that to go between 3D and the 2D original. That's already probably more ambitious than we'd get though, that's why it's my hypest prediction. Similar to Mario Maker, you'd have a limit on how many things you can drop down. In this case, you'd only be allowed so many rooms, dropping your layout down just like in the Link's Awakening Dungeon Maker, but then going into each room and actually creating the layouts and puzzles for each room using the dungeons, items, and more from each game type. You can decide what items Link has going into the dungeon, as well as an item for him to receive in it, where the keys are placed, where the boss room is, what boss is in that dungeon, from a set list based on which game type you choose, and more. But just like Mario Maker, your dungeon has to be beatable before you can share it. So no cheating, cheaters. You'd even be able to set it up so you can share a set of 8 dungeons with your progress carrying between each one. So you use the item you got from the last dungeon into the next one, and so on. But without all the outside of dungeon exploration and story of a real Zelda game. I think it's the kind of thing that would inspire fan game creators to flex their muscles in a way that won't get DMCA'd, but doesn't give enough tools to, one-up Nintendo at their own game. Because we all know they're not a fan of that. There would obviously still be a slew of horrible dungeons created by people that just clearly don't understand proper puzzle structure or anything, as well as some full of so many enemies you'd think you were playing Gauntlet instead, but that's inevitable in this kind of game. I mean, look at some of the garbage that gets created in Mario Maker, but there's also some absolute masterpieces in there. I think this would allow people to flex a different kind of creativity, since it's less about ridiculous platforming prowess and more about combat and puzzle solving. But that's even more reason for Nintendo to make it. People that want the platforming challenge already have Mario Maker. Let us do the same thing for Zelda dungeon ideas. I'd personally love it. Like I said before, that I wouldn't have to make my ideas out of Legos. Those are a slew of various Zelda anniversary ideas Nintendo might do, all sloppily organized into 4 vague and not at all distinct categories. What do you think? What are you hoping we get this year? And why will it probably be way more disappointing than anything we expect to get? Let me know in the comments below. And until next month, when I have the mental capacity for a proper Zelda analysis video, stay legendary? Does that work for an outro? Sure. Let's go with that. Hey, so there's no bloopers for this video, so I'm going to do that thing where I talk randomly over the end slate. I'm planning still to do at least 11 proper Zelda videos this year. I just kind of got caught off guard by the new year, so I figured this would be a fun way to throw something in there. I actually only had 11 ideas for videos anyway, so this works. Random idea that popped into my head can be the 12th video. Great. Next month will probably be kind of a full series retrospective. It's kind of tentatively titled From Then to Now. And it's basically comparing the series roots with Zelda 1 to the most recent entry, Breath of the Wild, to kind of see how the series has evolved and how it's also managed to still keep its roots from that original game. Since that's the point of Breath of the Wild, I thought it would be kind of fun to actually look into those similarities and differences. I'm saying this partially to hold myself accountable so I actually make the video, but also so you have a little tease of what's to come next month. But hopefully we'll actually have some news from Nintendo before then, and there might be more than that. We'll see. But anyway, I think this little end thing is long enough. I was kind of just shooting for 20 seconds to have the cards over, but it's definitely longer than that. Oh well, this is a short video. So, thank y'all for watching. I already kind of did an outro, so I guess I'm just going to stop talking.